What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. Today we're going to be doing a recap and a reaction to the game between the LA Wildcats and the Houston Roughnecks for Week 1 in the XFL. But hey, if you guys are looking for XFL content posted daily, click that like and subscribe button. We'll be posting stuff throughout the XFL season, keeping you up to date on everything that's happening in the XFL. I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get started right away. Alright guys, so as I said, we are recapping the LA Wildcats and Houston Roughnecks game. Final score in this one, Houston 37, LA 17. Now if you're looking for a condensed version of this game, you can actually click the link in the description box or click the info box above me, and you can see I've cut out all the fluff. You can watch every single play of the game in a condensed recap form, so hopefully that helps you guys. But anyway, let's get into recapping this. Now overall, just looking at this game as a whole, it was very competitive through the first half, but you could just see slowly Chad Kanoff, just the back quarterback for the Wildcats, just started to lose his composure as the game went on, and this game just got out of hand in the second half. But overall, pretty much what we expected. We knew that the Houston Roughnecks were going to have a tremendously strong offense. We knew that the Wildcats on defense weren't going to be that good, and no surprise, very next day, or I guess technically Monday, the defensive coordinator for the LA Wildcats was let go, so their defense probably isn't going to be improving too much anytime soon. This is going to be a team that we're going to want to exploit a lot in daily fantasy and through our season-long leagues. But with Josh Johnson hopefully coming back this week, that will hopefully mean a lot more high-score games similar to this one. And with the Roughnecks, this might just end up being you're going to win your league based on how many Houston Roughnecks you have on your team. But anyway, let's go through. We'll start with the Wildcats and break down the box scores here. So looking at the quarterback, as I mentioned, Josh Johnson did not start this game. They went with their backup, Charles Kanoff. 21 of 40, had 214 yards and 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Also had a rushing touchdown in this one. Ended the day with 4 carries for 21 yards and that touchdown. So overall, he looked really good in the first half. Seemed pretty composed, was making some really nice throws. Towards the second half, though, he started getting frustrated. Something was going on with his helmet, not being able to hear the play calling. Not really sure the exact problem that he was going through, but you could just see the frustration on his face. And as the game went on, just started making more mistakes. And I think towards the end of the game, they actually pulled him out, pulled McClendon in, and for a drive or two, put Kanoff back in, and then Kanoff got hit really hard, got pulled out again, made some comment to the regard of potentially separating his shoulder. So thoughts and prayers for him. Hopefully he's okay, but it sounds like even if Josh Johnson isn't playing, we're not going to see Kanoff anytime soon. All right, jumping over to the running backs now. This is another team to really pay attention to, because running backs, I'm learning just based from this first week, it's going to be really hard to find consistent fantasy production from a running back. There's a lot of committees in the XFL right now, and this is definitely a committee as well, but not a dreaded 3 or 4 back committee like we've seen with some teams. This is definitely more of a 2-man show. We got Elijah Hood there. He got 12 attempts for 43 yards. Big problem for him was he had no targets, but he looked really good on the runs. He had a nice hurdle play. He had a few big, broken runs, and I think that Elijah Hood will see his value increase as the season goes on, as the Wildcats offense starts to, flourish and get better. So I think Elijah Hood is definitely someone to target right now in trades. Larry Rose also looked phenomenal. He didn't get to touch the ball much. He only had 3 carries for 14 yards, and he only had 1 reception for 7 yards. So barely got to touch the ball, but when he did, he looked explosive and should be that third down back, or would be the handcuff should Elijah Hood go down. Dwan Harris was listed as the RB2. He only had 2 carries for 6 yards. Not really much to see there. This is all about Elijah Hood and Larry Rose there as that sleeper candidate to potentially help you out towards the end of the season. All right, jumping over to the receivers here. Now, Nelson Spruce, we had ranked very high. We didn't have him ranked high enough. 15 targets. 11 receptions for 103 yards, the first 100-yard plus wide receiver in the XFL. He was just being targeted over and over and over and over and over and over and over, to quote Marshawn Lynch. Just dominated this game, and it was sad to see the Wildcats not be able to produce as much in the second half, because Spruce could have had an even bigger game if Kanoff would have been able to continue playing like he did in the first half. But the only thing we have to definitely take with a grain of salt here is because Josh Johnson wasn't playing, we don't know exactly who he is going to favor with his targets, but I would imagine that with the Nelson Spruce bottle being broken open, it's going to be very hard to put those pieces back together. He's definitely going to be one of, if not the most valuable fantasy receivers in the XFL going forward. If you have him, do not trade him. If you don't have him, do whatever you can to get him. This is a buy high moment. Very rarely do we endorse buy highs, but Nelson Spruce is definitely someone you want to buy high on if you're able to. And looking at some of the other receivers here, we didn't see any targets for Trey McBride. I don't even know if he stepped on the field. Saeed Blacknell looked really bad, 4 targets, no catches on this one. Again, we're having to take a lot of this with grains of salt because it's not Josh Johnson playing. Donis Jennings didn't do much. Kermit Whitfield had an okay game, 3 receptions, 30 yards, and then also 2 runs for 10 yards. Really the only other wide receiver that did something here and someone that you probably want to pick up is Jordan Smallwood. He ended up getting that starting spot and had 7 targets, only 3 catches for 28 yards, but had that really nice touchdown grab in the first half. So Jordan Smallwood definitely a name to monitor going forward. Probably going to have to continue to wait and see how this wide receiver core develops once Josh Johnson is back. But right now, you want Nelson Spruce on your team, and you probably want Jordan Smallwood. All right, looking over the tight ends, we only saw Brandon Barnes get any targets. He looked really good in this game. He only had 4 targets, 2 catches for 31 yards, so you're probably not happy with that fantasy production, but the tight end spot is really hard to get consistent production in this league. And Brandon Barnes, like I said, looked really good. The few times he did get catches. So overall, I think that Brandon Barnes is probably going to be a buy low. This is going to be a buy low moment for him, seeing that he only put up 5 fantasy points in PPR this week. With Josh Johnson coming back, look for his targets to increase. Look for those targets to be more on point. I think Brandon Barnes is going to be one of the better tight ends going forward. You can lock him down in a trade. I would go for that. All right, so and then as I said on the defensive side of the ball, LA just, I mean, they had a few good plays in their secondary, but overall they just weren't able to keep up with Houston. And maybe this will end up being where LA's defense isn't as bad as I'm thinking that they are, and maybe it's just that Houston's offense is just super good. They did get a lot of pressure on PJ Walker from their defensive line, and they did a good job shutting down Sammie Coates, but overall their defense just was not able to hang, and I think this will end up being a defense that we can exploit for fantasy going forward. All right, let's jump over to the winning team, the Houston Roughnecks now. PJ Walker was our quarterback 1 of the week, and he delivered. Came through with 23 completions on 39 attempts for 272 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception near the end of the game. Also had 4 attempts for 26 yards on the ground. So just getting it done all around. Came really close to 300 total yard game, but 4 touchdowns. You're going to take that all day long in this league, especially this first week before offenses are really settled in. He just looked like he was in complete control of the game, had total composure. This offense is going to work really well to his strengths, and PJ Walker could very well end up being the MVP in this league. So if you got him in your drafts later, be very thankful because you just got the potential Lamar Jackson of the XFL. All right, jumping over to the running game. This was one of the biggest shockers on the week. Andre Williams and D'Angelo Henderson were the only 2 running backs listed on the depth chart, and James Butler was only listed as a kick returner. Well, Andre Williams got 2 carries, didn't get any yards, and he had 1 reception for 7 yards. D'Angelo Henderson came in, got 1 carry for -6 yards, took a big hit, and never came back into the game. I don't know if he was actually hurt, didn't look like it, but he just didn't touch the ball again. After the first quarter, or even before the first quarter even ended, James Butler came on the field and he never left. Like, this was probably the only running back in the entire XFL that looked like the typical bell cow role, if you will, just from a amount of time he was on the field, the amount of snaps he took. He ended the day with 9 carries for 30 yards, only averaging 3.3 a carry, but he had that rushing touchdown near the end zone, and he also was involved in the passing game, 2 receptions, 20 yards, and that 16-yard score. So overall, 2 touchdowns from a running back that never left the field after Andre Williams and D'Angelo Henderson left. He's going to be a waiver wire guy because I don't think many people drafted him, but he's going to be your number one waiver pickup of the week. You can't ignore the fact that he was on the field so much from a league where running backs are running off and on the field all day long in a potential, the highest potential offense in the league. James Butler is going to be someone that you have to pick up. You cannot let him stay on the waiver wire. All right, jumping over to the receivers. And again, just a reminder, the Roughnecks do not have any tight ends, so there's no tight ends that we're going to talk about here. But Sammie Coates, this is a decent buy low moment, I'd say. Now, I think a lot of people are, myself included, were very disappointed in his performance here. Only 2 catches for 26 yards, but he did have 9 targets. He was double teamed on a lot of plays. He had a couple very near scores. He could have very easily had 2-3 touchdowns in this game. I'm not giving up just yet. He still looked very good. He just needs to, come down with those grabs near the sideline and keep one foot in bounds. Overall, like I said, I think this is a very good buy low moment for a guy that we know has the talent to succeed in this league. Just didn't come through in this game. Kahlil Lewis, the other receiver that we really like here, did come through. 6 targets, 5 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown in this one. Definitely happy if you have him. We were wondering who was going to be the wide receiver 3. Might end up being the wide receiver 1 is Phillips. 9 targets, 4 receptions and 67 yards and a touchdown. Had that 50-yard bomb in the first quarter, and just overall looked phenomenal out there. Like I said, 9 targets, that's something that you can't ignore. He's going to be your number 1 waiver pickup for wide receivers on this week. There's no one else that really stood out as much as Phillips. Nick Hawley, also someone to keep in mind. 5 targets, 4 receptions, 50 yards. Looked pretty good. Kind of looked a little bit like Rex Burkhead out there, but overall pretty good. Sam Mobley with the other touchdown, only 1 catch. He had 2 back-to-back targets in the end zone, both bombs, and that was the only time you ever heard from him. But 1 reception, 39 yards, and a touchdown, definitely good for him. No one else really here to note from a fantasy perspective. So overall, as I said, this could be one of the most prolific offenses in the XFL, and you might just end up winning your league based on how many Houston Roughnecks you have. So if you have PJ Walker, you have Kahlil Lewis, Sammie Coates, Phillips, James Butler. That might be the key. And when you look at their defense, other than Coney Ely, their defense definitely had some struggles all game. They were able to get into Chad Kanoff's head into the second half and start forcing some turnovers. But overall, the fact that they let Chad Kanoff, stay in this game through the first half, I think definitely shows that their defense is not their strong suit. This is a team that's based around the offense. So it's going to be really fun seeing how these teams play next week. The Wildcats get to play the Renegades in what should end up being a high-score game if Josh Johnson comes back. And then the Roughnecks get to play the Battlehawks. We'll see how good the Battlehawks defense actually is. But anyway, again, if you guys are looking for fantasy and XFL content posted daily, click that like and subscribe button. And hey, check out my website, fantasyaddictionnetwork.com, where I have waiver wire tips, trade tools, rankings, everything you need to succeed in your league. Check out that website, absolutely free. Click the link in the description below. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.